Call this meeting to order, 7:03 PM. First item on the agenda are welcome comments, announcements, events. Is there any discussion on anything from our event sheet? Anything you want to add? Any general announcements you want to make?
Make one, which is that it's about an event that's it's about an event in May that the First Parish Environmental Team is arranging, talk about carbon sequestration in forests with Bill Mumaw, who's a great speaker, and I'm gonna have a call with him tomorrow and try to talk to him to do something very relevant to the climate action plan, and I'm gonna suggest some things to him. So that'll be at the beginning of May, although there is one talk by him in March. I don't know if that's in your list.
I believe so.
Okay, yeah. You just pick, and Fran.
Yes, the one in March is March 4, 7 to 8:30 PM, and that is in everybody's list. But this would be prospectively a different talk than that. Because that one is on trees and this would be more focused on us, we hope.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Megan, did you want to make any announcements?
Well, I apologize that I did not have a written report this evening. I did write one, but a lot of the meetings that I had related to the work that we're all doing took place kind of toward the end of last week, so I didn't have a chance to include something in the packet. But I will say a press release went out, I think an email announcement went out about our MVP 2.0 program for $100,000, 50,000 of which will be for a seed project that will come out of that inclusive outreach efforts. So we're really excited about that, and we're excited to kind of integrate that with our Weston and Sampson Climate Action and Resilience Plan update work. Somehow, and we'll figure out how to do that. But it's, it's all outreach and it's all good, and how to figure out how to do that. So that's exciting. And a couple of the meetings that I had last week that I wanted to note was we've been talking a lot about the ESCO and natural gas contract and carbon reduction effort. And so we did have a positive, by we, I mean myself, our facilities manager, Russ Carlstead, Shannon, and our procurement team had a positive meeting with Bob Connery, the assistant superintendent at the schools. And so we talked about our gas usage and our current contracts that we each have with different companies, and how we could think about working together to do a Power Options gas contract when their contract expires, which would allow us to opt into the carbon reduction model that we've been discussing. So right now, the gas prices are high because it's winter. So it wouldn't be the best time to enter into a contract. At this moment, we get weekly emails about the rates. And so we are working to get all the procurement and analysis and research done on the back end, so that when the rates do reduce, we will be able to act and work together. But the school is very interested in partnering and finding ways to finance efficient projects. So, and I also met with the school sustainability coordinator, who's newly appointed, and we had a nice conversation about two of the committees that she supports. Sunrise, is that right? Sunshine,
yeah.
Sunrise. And the green team, I think. And they have a little bit of different missions, as I understand it, and I know some of you all work with them. But we had a productive conversation about how they could participate in the climate action and resilience plan. And I think they're kind of two groups that are ready and willing to contribute, and we can find ways to incorporate their ideas and energy. And that was just one of the things that they could participate with. And then the final update is the Suasco Watershed Climate Collaborative. That effort continues. We're pushing for our March 25th, I think, community meeting that's gonna be hosted at Harvey Wheeler. I've mentioned that a number of times here. And our recent efforts have been to get our flyer together, to start sharing that publicly. We're also working to procure translation services to have the flyer translated into a number of different languages. So there's a diverse number of languages, or a number of different languages spoken within the watershed, and so we'll want to have both the flyer translated and services available if folks are subpoenaed they're coming, so that they can participate fully and we can incorporate their feedback. So MAPC has been a real leader in that, I think, in helping us understand best practices, and so we are working towards that. I think that's it.
Excellent, thank you. Any discussion?
I'm just curious what the attendance was for the youth, Suasco.
It was 4.
I was wondering. If
It was 1 student.
One student?
But we do have it was a different student. We do have another student who is gonna be on our steering committee. And she is from Concord Carlisle High School, and our first steering committee is tomorrow. So, you know, a little more work to do there.
Yeah.
Gotta reach out to the youth, but I think when we found out what times they meet, like early in the morning for our climate action plan, I think we'll be able to, find some times and really maybe design some opportunities for them to weigh in on feedback and have probably reach out to them a few times, hopefully. And maybe we can all do that, we can, like, with the consultant, we can find ways to plug that in.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank
Next item on the agenda is CMLP presentation on time of day rollout. Laura, would you introduce yourself to our guests and for the minutes, please?
Sure, Laura Scott, I'm the Assistant Director for Power Supply and Energy Management over at the Municipal Light Plant. Been there about 10 years. And first I want to thank you for allowing me to come to your committee meeting tonight and talk to you about a very exciting project that we have going on. In fact, we have been working towards this day for at least 10 years.
Wow.
There was a lot of prerequisite work that needed to be done, and we are finally nearing the finish line. We plan to roll these rates out in April. So let's talk about transitioning to time of day electric rates. Go ahead and advance the slide. So the way we currently bill for electricity is based on the volume that you use, and the more you use, the more you pay. If you look in this, you can see this red box area over here. You can see the first 657 kilowatt hours, you pay 5.6 cents. The next 178, you pay 6.9. And if you start using more than 835 kilowatt hours a month, you pay almost 9.5 cents. So this type of rate structure, also called an inclining block, was put in place sometime in the 2010s. And the thought was that it would encourage conservation, that if you charge people more for using more, that would encourage them to use less. I think the research I've looked at is the jury's out a little bit on whether that actually works. But now that we are changing our focus to encouraging people to electrify uses of energy that were previously fossil fuels, such as vehicle transportation and home heating, they're going to be using more and more electricity. And so people say, well, I've done all the right things. I've gotten a heat pump, I've gotten an EV, and you're charging me the highest rate. You're punishing me, essentially. And so we wanted to rework this type of rate design. This type of charging, this way of charging does not really reflect modern grid costs, and we will talk a little bit about that. So same price regardless of the time of day, just based on the volume that you use. Shannon, can you go to the next slide? So this chart on the right is a chart of power prices at the ISO New England Energy Hub. I grabbed a screenshot from January 30th and January 31st of this year. And you can see that the price varies. It moves from a low of about $200 to a high of about $400. You can see 8 a.m. it's higher, 2 p.m. it's lower, 7 p.m. it's higher, 2 p.m. it's lower. And so this is partly the charge that CMLP pays to acquire power to then redeliver to our customers here in Concord. And so because we pay a different amount depending on the time of day, it makes sense if we really want to pass on the cost as a true pass through to charge the folks who are using it during the expensive times more than the people who are using it during the less expensive times, because it doesn't cost us the same. Right now, it all gets just flattened out and subsidized, all thrown into a bucket. So the idea that the energy cost varies by time of day, and then we have another significant expense we pay beyond energy that's called capacity and transmission. And that those costs are assessed based on how much CMLP is using, so the load for the whole town, during the hour of the month that the regional system peaks. Not when CMLP has its highest hour, but when northeastern Massachusetts is experiencing its highest hour. Let's say it's, January 10th between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. The ISO goes and looks at what Concord was using at that time. And that's the number they then apply a rate to and charge us for it. So if we can lower our usage just during that 1 hour, we can reduce, it's about 40% of our total costs, about $9 million, are based on this one peak hour. And the other point to make about the way things are changing is that, solar EVs and heat pumps are changing the usage patterns. One of the reasons you see these dips in prices in the afternoon at 2 p.m. is in fact because of solar. You have more solar generation at that time. And so it has the effect of bringing the prices down. Next slide. Okay, so to the rescue. We are going to roll out a time of day rate on April 1st, 2026. And the message to our customers is that you can save money, you can reduce grid demand and contribute to a cleaner energy future. Next slide. So how are these rates different? Well, basically the price is going to vary by the time of the day. There's going to be a higher cost during peak demand hours and a lower cost during lower usage hours overnight. Slide. This is a graphic. I hope it's intuitive. We looked at a number of different graphics, but basically this is meant to show the hours of the day from 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. the next day. And you can see two areas to focus on. The red section is what we're calling the peak. That's from 3 to 7 p.m. on weekdays. And that's when you want to avoid using things. Any kind of type of discretionary use. You wouldn't want to charge a car then, you wouldn't want to run your pool pump. You want to keep away from those items. The yellow stuff off to the right, that's the sweet spot. That's going to be the cheapest rate. That's when you do want to charge a car, run pool pumps, anything that you can reasonably do. We're not asking people to get up at 1 a.m. and do their laundry, but things that are programmable and easily adaptable, it's a good place to save money. The rest of the time, is considered off peak, and it's the prices in between the peak and the off peak hours. I don't know if you can see this. I know it's a little bit small. In addition to those times of day, there are going to be two seasons within the year. There's going to be shoulder months, which are March, April, October, November, and standard months, which are all the other months. And again, this just reflects how expensive energy capacity and transmission are during different times of years, as well as different times of the day. So on the left are what we charge right now for our residential customers. It's 20.5 cents for the lowest rate and 24.4 cents for the largest volume, everything over 835 kilowatt hours. What we're going to, and we're planning to roll this out in phases. This is phase one. In phase one, the differences in the prices are not going to be as drastic. We're going to do that in phase two. And the idea was we wanted to roll this out slowly so that people could get used to it, so that they could purchase enabling technologies if they wanted to, or learn how to program their vehicle before the differentials get even wider. So we're thinking about a year at phase one, and then we would go to phase two. So in phase one, the cheapest price is basically 20 cents, And the most expensive price is 30.3 cents. That's that 3 to 7 p.m. On weekdays. Any questions about this before I move on? Oh, you're all experts. I love it. Okay, next slide, please. So what this means for customers, currently the only way to save money on your electric bill is to use less. There's no other way to lower your electric bill. Now, if with time of day, to the extent you can shift some of your usage, you can now actually lower your bill. It is contributing to a lower carbon future because to meet that peak load between the 3 and 7 p.m. timeframe, we are running our least efficient, dirtiest power plants to meet that load. And this winter, when it's been really cold, we've been running a lot of oil. So to the extent we can reduce the amount we use during that peak hour, we take some of those dirty power plants offline, and that's a benefit to everybody. This time of day structure also supports programs like EVs and heat pumps and solar more effectively than the old way, and it's also a fairer allocation of costs. We talked about that initially, that those who are using the expensive power should contribute more to it. Yes, please. So I just want to shift the focus a little bit to tell you about some of the initiatives that we are employing to get the word out to customers. We started inserting bill inserts. I hope you've all received at least one in January. We have created a new website for time of day. It's concordma.gov/TOD. And it's got rate calculators on it. It's got frequently asked questions. There's quite a bit of information up there, should you be interested. We're also utilizing social media and the town news and notices to get information out. We're doing in-person sessions like this one. Our hope is that even though there are not a lot of people at these meetings, that each one of you then becomes sort of an ambassador to go out to the community as you're talking with your neighbor, your friend, over a coffee, and you say, hey, you hear about this time of day stuff? Oh, I want to know about that. Is that gonna raise our rates a lot? And now once you're experts, you'll be able to explain it to them, and it'll permeate throughout the community. Anyway, that's the hope. So we're also doing direct mail, targeted mails to folks with specific uses like solar, people on rate assistance, just letting them know how this is gonna work. We are getting magnets for your refrigerator with that graphic on it, so you can remember what the hours are. And as I said, we did start frequently asked questions, which is sort of an organic document. Every time a new question comes in, first we have to figure out what the answer is, and then we slap it on the frequently asked questions page. So next one, Shannon. This is just an example of the new landing page for time of day. You can see the over on the left, you can get to it from the main page. Next page, Shannon. On the time of day webpage itself, I mentioned those frequently asked questions. There's tips for saving, time of day rate calculator, time of day rates, and time of day resources. This is just an example of some of the outreach material. We did hire a third-party company that specializes in outreach, and they've done lots of time of day rollouts. And we felt that it was very important to get the information out to our customers, and so we wanted to do a professional, rollout. So we went ahead and spent the money for that. Next slide. Just some more graphics leading up to April 1st. So we'll be including updates, in the monthly bills and also on our online platform called Smart Hub. Next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we don't have a lot of time, but this is an example of one of those calculators that you can use. There are simple calculators and more complex calculators. This one, you can kind of shift. If I do my dryer at this time instead of this time, how much does that change the bill? Next slide. How the transition will work. So we're trying to get the education and the bill comparisons out first, and then we will be rolling this out as what we call a default opt-out time of day rate, which means everyone who's on the R1 rate today automatically goes to this time of day rate, unless they fill out a form and say, I want to opt out. And for those who opt out, they're going to be able to stay on a rate that looks like the rate today, has that inclining block, but it's going to be about 4% higher than the time of day rate based on expected usage. So, you know, we envision we have sort of averages for each class, how much they use. And all else equal, someone would be better off under time of day by 4% than the opt-out. And we do that because we're thinking the people who are gonna opt out are the ones who are gonna be using a lot of that expensive power. And so we need to collect a little bit more to offset that effect. We're also gonna ask people not to flip back and forth between the opt-out rate and the TOD rate more than once in every 12 months. I really feel like the people in Concord have better things to do than try to arbitrage their electricity bill on a month-to-month basis, but you would be surprised. And so we're gonna institute the rule. Okay, that's all I have for a formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has, if there's time.
Yeah, I think there is, one question about, the decision-making process into those various times of day, being designated peak, off peak. It seems as if the highest use time, or among the highest use times, is actually when people wake up in the morning and are getting ready for work. But that's treated alongside a lot of other pretty low use times. Can you talk about what went into the thinking of not having an additional kind of peak or bump in rate during that wake up time?
So there's counterbalancing goals. One is rate precision, the other one is rate simplicity. So, you know, you want to be as precise as possible, but if you're really precise, then the rate would be gobbledygook, it'd be changing every hour and, you know, it'd be too confusing for people. So we have to try to create a balance there. And right in the winter, in the mornings, we can see energy prices as high as we do in the evening. Only in the winter that happens right now, that doesn't happen in the other months, so like December, January, February, the typical months where that happens. But that's the 60% of the cost, but the other 40% is being determined by that 1 hour, and so far, the peak has not happened in the morning hours. So all that capacity and transmission expense is being assigned to us based on what's going on in the evening.
And what's the process by which you're gonna sort of do post audit of how things are going after you've rolled it out? Can you walk us through sort of how you're gonna track how it's going and what process you're gonna use to consider future adjustments to optimize it?
So, I mean, one thing we're very keen to learn is, do people reduce during the peak? You know, we have a baseline data from, we installed our smart meters. We now have about 2 years worth of data on most meters. And so we have a baseline, we know what people are using. Once we roll out time of day, we're very curious and anxious to see how did those rates, did they impact people's usage? And are we seeing a reduction in the peak? So that's one analysis that we will be performing as the program gets going. Other post rollout activities will include, you know, was enough information provided in advance that we are not inundated with questions or problems, or, you know, we're hopeful that we are anticipating things that will happen, but as we all know in life, there are typically the known knowns and the unknown unknowns, and, you know, it's hard to plan for everything. So we will be monitoring the volume of calls that are coming in and what people are asking about, and try to adjust our messaging on our website and our materials to respond to questions that we get that we might not have anticipated.
Super. Other questions?
Yeah, I probably, first of all, this is great, so thank you very much. What's gonna happen to rates for certain electrical uses that right now are controlled by CMP, for example, water heater? So, you know, I've agreed to have you turn it off certain hours of the day. In exchange for that, there's certain rate reduction.
Yeah.
And the same thing with e-charging my EV and also with my ETS heating system. So what's gonna happen to those programs?
Each one of those is gonna experience a different fate.
Okay,
Your ETS rate is gonna be basically the same as it is this year. It's going up 2%
okay,
next year, but it's gonna look like it does today. There's no meter charge, and it's just a volumetric low rate
Yeah,
that you're used
and
to.
it's still gonna be charging them from 10 to,
10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Yeah.
and then the afternoon boost.
okay,
Temperature gets low. But it is anticipated to go up 2% per year
right,
until you've had your system for 20 years. And then you fall off the ETS rate and you go to the time of day rate. So
okay,
that's the fate for ETS. The hot water heater, we're gonna continue to control those if you want. You're
Okay.
still gonna get the credit for that.
okay. In addition to the,
In addition to keeping
Time of
you, yeah, not,
that's good, okay, it's cool.
so that's kind of a double benefit. And then the last one was the
Yeah,
EV.
EVs.
You have a separate meter for your EV?
Yeah, I think so. We charge, I think deals, no, I don't, but we charge out to 10. You get like $10.
Okay, so that program is going away, the EV
Okay.
miles program.
Oh, it is.
And you should be able to, but you should be able to
Charge it.
lower your bill by
Yeah.
charging during that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When is that going away? When this?
so that'll be March 31st will be the last credit, and then starting April 1st, that month will be charged on the time of day rate.
What about vehicle to grid?
Vehicle to grid,
Is that going to be, is that still being?
that's not part of this effort. That is something we want to do. We are working with the school bus to try to make that happen.
As the, at the first place?
Yeah, the first place. And we're also trying to get battery to grid. I don't know if you're aware, but batteries today, if people install batteries at their homes, when they discharge the battery, it can only cover their home use. They can't discharge it back out to the grid yet. But we have a number of other initiatives going on, same time as this, that will hopefully make it easier for us to move towards a vehicle to grid or energy to grid, home to grid world. We're installing SCADA, which it's amazing we've been able to operate without it. But that's a real time, supervisory control and data acquisition system that will enable us to see the system. Right now, we're kind of like, somebody calls up and says, power's out over there, we're like, over there, we see it's out, but I mean, we really need real-time visibility of the system. And that will help with that, but that's not part of time of day per se.
I heard you did a calculation about batteries that said that it would have a very long time to pay it back if you use this, but I was wondering, is that just using these rates that you're introducing in April, or are they next year's rates, or are they,
We use next year's rates
okay.
when I did that calculation, but I didn't let the battery push back. Right, I took an average size battery, which was about,
Okay.
I can't remember the numbers, Brad, if it was 10 kilowatts, 20 kilowatt hours. It's only like 2 hours worth of storage. And I said, you're gonna charge them during the super off peak price. And then you're gonna save the peak price because you're gonna lower your energy usage during that month. And that's what the payback was based on. I just did a calculation this morning for the solar payback. And with the CMLP rebate, the $1,000 from Massachusetts. And assuming you can sell RECs for $30 a megawatt hour, was 13 years.
For residential home, for any, for what?
It was,
Size.
it was the average size that we've seen installed in the last 12 months. And I wanna say that was, 14 kilowatts. I have to look it up exactly, but we took whatever our average was and we took the average cost that we've seen to come up with that payback.
So other than networking this out with all of the people that are clamoring to talk to us about the environment, there are other things that you would like the Climate Action Committee be doing to support either the rollout or support your work as you start learning about how it's going?
That's a great question. I do want, if at all possible, for you to become ambassadors and help, get the word out about this. This is a revenue neutral activity. Rates are not gonna increase. It's just changing the way we're collecting for them, but we are planning to collect the exact same amount of revenue in 2026 as we did in 2025. People, let them know it's okay to use power during the peak. You're not supposed to, not cook dinner at, 2 in the morning and do your laundry at 5 and, built into these rates is an assumption you're gonna use a certain amount on peak. So, what we're asking people to do is be smart about it. First, try to control the things that are programmable and don't impact your life, such as the EV, the pool pumps, batteries. Second category would be things where it's a mild adjustment to your habits, but maybe not horrible. That might be things like a programmable dishwasher or not doing your laundry between 3 and 7. Or it's not so much the washer, it's the dryer. Not to use the dryer between 3 and 7. And then the last thing is things we don't want people to mess with. We just want them to set it and forget it. That includes heat pumps during phase 1, and obviously any medical devices or equipment that requires power. So it's really those 3 categories: easy to program, won't impact your lifestyle; moderate impact your lifestyle; moderate benefit, and don't touch it. And then I do think, as you asked on a larger question, not related to TOU, and I'm very curious to hear more about the climate action plan update. The light plan is a vehicle for getting a lot of things done in the town that the town wants, which is great. It's great that we have the light plan, we have the ability to do that, such as 100% non-carbon emitting power. This year, what I really want to do is take a look at where we're spending our money on rebates and where we're spending our effort, and really align it with the town's goals. And we can't do everything for all people, so let's pick the smartest things. Like right now, we're giving out, $10,000 full home rebates. We do give out Drive EV rebates for the purchase of a car, but they pale in comparison to that heat pump. I think we're actually getting more bang for our buck with the EVs than we are with the heat pumps. So working with you all to, you're doing a lot of work over here with, savings when you install the heat pump in terms of the greenhouse gases. Let's make sure we're coordinated. I don't want to redo work you've already done. We should be using similar assumptions anyway. So some of the work that we do to carry out, just want to make sure we stay coordinated and we know we're making the most effort in the right places.
Excellent. Well, right back at you. We want you and Jason and the members of the light board to talk with these folks sitting in the back row.
I want to do that.
I would suggest if there's no objection that we move on to them.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation and for all of the great things that you guys are doing to get these folks happening.
Well, that was a great segue. That was an easy transition.
Please, as you get started, introduce yourselves to us. So we have it in the minutes and that our guests on the screen there know who they're hearing from.
Great. Thank you for having us. I'm Cassidy Yates. I'm a climate resilience and sustainability engineer with Weston and Sampson.
And I'm Billy LaFave. I'm a sustainability specialist with Weston and Sampson.
So we're on the consultant team that's supporting the climate action and resilience plan update. So we're here today to talk about some updates on what we've been doing so far, some next steps, and how the committee will be involved in the process, and kind of the back and forth that we'll have to have so that we can create a plan for your community that's a great fit and that's aligned with existing efforts and things that are already ongoing, and really works from the existing plan that you already have to create something for those next key 5 years.
Welcome.
Thank you. So in the packet, you should have received, we'll start just kind of from the top there a little bit on our project timeline. So there's a graphic there that just shows over the course of this year how we'll plan to progress the project, right now, starting with some of the initial planning and understanding what's been done to date and progress since the last plan. Engagement is something that we'll do throughout the process and have started thinking about, so we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Action identification is really the core of this work, so it's figuring out what's already been done since the last plan and where we need to go, what are the key steps for doing that, followed by some analysis on emissions reductions in the adaptation planning piece, and then finally getting into the key details that will fill out the plan and provide you with the resources moving forward that you need in that planning document. And we've got, going back to engagement, throughout the process, as you may all be familiar, we have some community engagement meetings that will be scheduled, likely in May, before the summer months, and then either try to do it before summer vacation or immediately following in September. And then we'll also be engaging with the different town departments. So we have a couple meetings scheduled or in our scope that we will schedule at critical points for reviewing draft actions and getting that feedback on implementation details. And then we'll probably also do some follow-up coordination with different departments by email as needed, but likely 2 meetings, and then just coordination through Shannon and Megan. And then, of course, engagement with all of you. So we have 4 meetings scheduled or in our scope. So we want to be strategic about that so that we can maximize our efficiency and what we're able to get done and coordinate with you all. So it's been a helpful start that you all have done some brainstorming already, thinking about what's been done and that update since that previous plan. So we're using that information, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But for our task 1, our review task, essentially, we've started going through your past climate action plan, the MVP plan, the hazard mitigation plan, lots of other documents that kind of note some of the vision for Concord, anything kind of related to both adaptation and mitigation. What we found the most helpful is the Excel file that some of you may have worked on last summer that started to look at like which of the actions have been completed and talking to different departments on what's been done. So that's been a really great starting point just to get a sense of all of these actions in the plan, where are we right now? So if there are any updates to any of that information or things that have been done since that document that you're familiar with, please let us know, because I think it was dated July. So that I'm sure things have been kind of in the motions since then. But really using that as our foundation, going back to those existing actions. So then here with you all today, we want to talk a little bit more about moving forward and the roles and kind of expectations for how we engage as a group. I know that you have the open meeting laws, so this is the best time to be talking as this group, but really at these monthly meetings. But essentially, I would love to hear from you all, kind of your vision for this plan in just a general sense. We have the brainstorming notes that you all have done at some of your past meetings on kind of like individual actions. So we'll talk more about that, but would love to hear kind of like how you all envision like input into the committee or from the committee, kind of informing the plan and the types of ways that you've been able to successfully work on other planning processes in the past. I know some of you may have been on the past committee when the first plan was developed, but I'll pause there just for kind of initial reactions and comments.
Did you ever send your brainstorming notes to the committee?
To the committee? No, but they have.
Yeah, I have them.
What? You have the notes,
Yeah,
but did you ever send them to us?
I didn't know I was supposed to, but I can.
No, I'm supposed to.
Okay. Well, I got the photos from Brad and I was able to sort of synthesize them into a Word document, so I think I can send that out, so.
But you will, I still have to curate it and insert it into minutes and post those and get it to a bigger group than just us, so I will get that to you.
Okay.
If this had been next week instead of this week, it might be done by now. Alas.
I did. Good.
Any reactions? Places we wanna jump in right now? Or do we
Yeah.
wanna hear more?
I wanna hear more.
Let's hear more.
Yeah. Great, well, so kind of a few of the key pieces or points of that'll be critical for input are certainly this action development piece and also before that, like what's been done to date, since you all know the community best. So like I mentioned, just that Excel file, we've been using that, so any other additional information is helpful there. But then moving into action development, I think starting with the brainstorming notes, It's really helpful in the way that it was set up with kind of like keeping actions, maybe as is, or very, very slight tweaks. Where a shift is needed, and then kind of things that are missing. So we have taken those.
I'm sharing this phone too.
Yeah, if you wanna pull one up, we've taken those notes and created these worksheets for them, so we included both the shift and the missing things that have been identified. I have a full paper version that I can pass around in case it's hard to see.
So essentially at the top here, it's sorted by the different sectors of the plan, which you did in the brainstorming session also. So there will be one page for built environment, one page for mobility. So on and so forth.
Okay. So we've organized this worksheet as something, as some next steps for the committee to continue to think about the things that have been identified. So listing out just those notes, some of them are kind of just ideas or topics and not really formulated actions. But we'll get to that process as we move through. So thinking about with this topic, and we can use the first one on the screen here, or the second one there, increased priority of retrofits. So this is for the built environment. This is one of the things that was noted under the shift column. So they're all different sectors on the pieces of paper. Sorry about that.
Okay,
We
yeah.
just printed out a few examples of
So-
different ones.
Not a hope of reading that.
This column just says increased priority of retrofits. So someone had wrote that down on the sheet. And then in the second column, as an example, I included here, how we would go about integrating that. So, you know, that's a topic where does it need to be a full new action in the plan? Is it an implementation detail of an existing action that we can really refine and work through? And one example of where that could fit is either in the improve energy performance of commercial buildings action, which already exists in the plan. Or it could fit into the electrification of the residential sector action as well, or both. So that's one area where some of those actions may be, those high level actions are considered keepers in the next plan. But some of these details might fit within that, so there's refinement to kind of those sub actions there. So this worksheet is really to identify from the brainstorming session, what's the next step and how do we transition this first initial thought into a place in the plan? And is it something that's high level, action level, or is it more of a detail level at the sub action level? And then we just have a third column there for justification, just so any like notes or why you feel that this is priority, that it should become a high level action, or why it should be a detail of something else. Some of the things in here also might be more related to to metrics for measuring success. So I saw some notes about some of the measures of success also. So you can note that kind of there too. But this would be just continuing the brainstorming session on with these ideas, and not limited to just these ideas. There's certainly more that will come up as we continue to think about this and work through new actions.
And to clarify, across the whole database with all of the 5 sectors, these are populated exclusively by the inputs from the brainstorming session, or is there any other information coming from elsewhere?
Correct. This is just from the brainstorming session.
So what this wouldn't necessarily reflect is anything that we did not comment upon during our brainstorming. We may need to go back to our plan and look at what each of those priority actions are, because we may have other things to fill in the margins or whatever. If we have new ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a great place in the missing kind of area, or can also continue to add even in the shift, like adding new additional ideas and topics that may need to be addressed. So it certainly can be not only, it can continue the brainstorming, I guess, through this process as well. And we have, we'll work with Shannon to send the digital version so that you can add columns and rows and tweak it as needed. But we were thinking maybe each committee member could take 2 sectors So that would make sure that everything gets kind of covered. You're welcome to look at all of them if you wanted to. But we came up with a little table just randomly assigning people to some, just so that way we're covered, but you're welcome to look at everything.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. I'm just curious. How quantitative are you gonna get? Like in terms of the adaptation planning? Are you going to present various scenarios of climate change we might see in Concord? Like increases in extreme temperature, precipitation, stuff like that?
I think if there's a desire for it, that's certainly something that we can do. There's lots of great climate data here in
Right.
Massachusetts, so we can certainly apply that to Concord and see what that might look like.
But does the committee think that's valuable to have an increase in extreme temperature, increase in extreme precipitation? In the various scenarios of that?
Yeah, so you're, you wanna lay out like a range of
Yeah,
scenarios?
we know what our future climate in Concord might look
Yeah.
like. Under a high emission scenario, and low emission scenario, let's say.
Right,
And that would also help drive some of the work on mitigation, like what are the consequences, you know, as a world, like Congress' contribution to that. I'm just a
Yeah.
suggestion.
I would like that because I think, I mean, granted it's hypothetical, but it's data driven. This is what it might look like, but then that grounds you in a conversation or a sort of level setting of like, this is what it might look like, and therefore these are the actions that we would need to take to mitigate versus just sort of saying,
It could be
Just-
warm or it could be,
right, and just kind of not having something to ground more data the better in my mind, but
is it a matter of just saying like a business as usual scenario and a more favorable scenario?
yeah,
Cause it wouldn't wanna have,
you don't need 50 of them, one you need is like 2 or 3.
yeah,
And it's, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Cassidy.
Cassidy pointed out, there's already good data available, and the state's just updating it right now. So
yeah.
it's just there.
What areas, I know there's some limited in flood mapping, for example, and I think that's one of our highest risk areas.
Well, no, in terms of excuse me, the area, the geographical area, or, no, so like. The state is doing a statewide climate assessment right now, right, and they're doing this, I think, Concord is in like. You know, some zone, like eastern Mass, like, I don't know how big it is, but it's like, yeah, it's equivalent to the, like, part of the MAPC area.
Mhm.
And then you can actually put downscale of Concord if you want to, but I don't think you need to, but I think that information is readily available.
Yeah.
And it'll be useful, I think. And then the other thing is, once you have this information, I mean, do we try to translate it into increase in heat depth? In Concord, I mean, do we want that, I mean, is that level of detail appropriate for this kind of study? Is it, I mean, you're thinking of doing those sort of things? You're producing like, you know, increase in floodplains in Concord. I mean, do you plan to go that quantitative in this study?
I think we were intending to do some quantitative pieces.
Yeah.
I think it'll be driven by what's most useful. I think especially thinking around like measures of success and metrics. Some of the ones we had in mind kind of on the mitigation side, we're thinking about like the number of heat pumps that need to be installed in Concord per year to meet a 2030 goal, to meet a
Right.
2040 goal, like really putting numbers to it that way that I think people can wrap their heads around. So I'd say we want to focus our energy on things that can help you track over time. And maybe less on the more like hypothetical long-term situations. Just knowing that if you continue to do regular plan updates, like that could be a future thing, but focusing more so on like what you need now to help drive that action.
Yeah, okay, so that applies to adaptation as well as mitigation, obviously. And the other comment is just my own observation. I mean, there's citizen groups like our group, and there's, you know, town agencies, town offices like DPW. And so they each have different roles in implementation. Like CMLP is very successful in what they do. I think they really drive a lot of the good work that goes on in Concord. So I think there's has to be some sort of balance between talking to citizens groups and then talking to the agencies that actually implement stuff. And I don't know enough about the workings of the town about how to balance that, but I think it has to be a consideration. Because, like DPW, they actually do stuff. We might just advise, but they actually do stuff. And sometimes what they do isn't always in line with what groups like us think they should be doing. So there's a balance there. Maybe, so I don't know, other people in this group may have a different point of view on that.
I agree with that, and I think that's a question that I'm really curious about. I don't have an answer, but given the different level of, let's call it buy-in or implementation of these types of things that our committee and the plan sort of says we should be doing, how do we engage with those agencies and make sure that everyone's sort of on board and contributing to the plan, but also then understanding their kind of obligations and accountability to the plan.
So we have in our scope 8 stakeholder interviews, so we were hoping to use those pretty strategically. As we figure out, okay, these are the 8 proposed actions that may be relevant to DPW. So we can have those more pointed conversations around, is it feasible? What are you doing in terms of this already? Is it on your radar? That really feasibility discussion. So I think with the 2 meetings that we have in our scope for, we might do more of like an introduction for multiple municipal departments at a time, like, hey, we're doing the plan, this is where we're at right now, here's some draft actions, and then have those more pointed discussions from there, like introduce the concept. And I think that's a great point where we take committee feedback and from those other external stakeholders too, or community members, to them and try to like start with, here's a bunch of ideas, here's what we're drafting into actions, and get their feedback at that point. So that way we're developing actions with input from all angles.
Would be valuable to get like the various citizens groups and the town commissions and town agencies together instead of direct discussion between us and, let's say, DPW.
That could be one option.
Would that be valuable?
It could be, yeah.
I was thinking, like, instead of you being the intermediary.
Sometimes there are limitations to what a large stakeholder may want to say in a public meeting. And thus it's more constructive to have another outlet, as it were, for them to talk about what they view as an opportunity or a challenge, without prying eyes, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to have both, right? We would like to have municipal workers and leaders on the record and part of a public process and deliberation. And there is also value to candid conversations, especially once they start getting specific about, these are the things that you're going to own accountability for. Are they going to be feasible for you? We want to make sure that anything that we've got in this plan is actually, going back to one of the themes from our brainstorming session, practical, achievable.
Right.
That it's actually going to work if we put it in the thing, and then some department head or director is going to own accountability for it and not feeling like it's being pushed on them in a public forum.
I know, 100%. That's why I'm thinking a discussion, might be more useful. If the DPW guy says, no, we can't, fix all the leaks in the sewer system, just impractical. That would be transparent, and we would, and people should know that. I think there's nothing here that's high security. And so I think everything could be pretty open in the ideal process. So is this a suggestion in terms of processes? Have more direct engagement between, citizens groups and town, organizations.
Along your initial question of predicting the impacts of the future, and presenting that. We've known we've had some of the hottest years already.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, from CMLP standpoint, the degree to which CMLPs have to go and purchase more electricity during these peak times that we've had under the high temperatures recently, and
The cold temperatures.
and the cold temperatures. And whether we've had to go to the marketplace to green our power by buying more RECs, and the cost, just a backcast to these events that we've had recently, and kind of predict what that's gonna mean in the future. I don't know how well you guys track these peak events. I'm sure you know exactly what the peak demand's been historically. Because that electricity, a lot of it, this comes down to the electricity discussion, I think. I don't know if that's helpful or not, if people understand what I'm
I
communicating.
think it's possible to do, extrapolate the increase in electricity costs into various climate change scenarios.
And demand.
Yeah,
Because even though it's a green supply, what I struggle with, that it's a green supply in the town, but we're part of the New England Power Pool. And that has a carbon footprint, the New England Power Pool has a footprint. So there's only so much green supply in this power pool coming in. And now we have the new hydro coming in from Canada. But it's still, I don't think we can just isolate the fact that, oh, Concord's producing buying green power. But, it's coming out of this pool. So
And
it's a little more complicated, I guess, in my mind.
I wanted to ask about, the greenhouse gas inventory, but we have did one for 2022 that, you seem to have, and I'm kind of redoing it for 2022 with the updated the newer MAPC tool, just to see how it changes. But, do we need one for 2025, or 2024 to help, inform the plan?
No, I think the 2022 data is fine, and then for those large sources like electricity, we can easily get that one single data source without having to update the whole inventory and do those individual calculations as needed, if that's something that we wanna see how that's changed over time.
Okay, good.
But we're very familiar with the NAPC tool, we just helped them update it for the 2022 version, as part of the Greater Boston Regional Climate Action Plan.
Oh,
review with them. So if you have any questions, or if there's data sources that we wanna dig into a little bit further, happy to.
Yeah, the 2020 plan, really was like actions to take in the next 5 years, and it almost sounded like once you get done with that, you're done. But, I'm very much hoping this plan kind of gives us visibility for, 25-year period, and sort of doesn't lay it out as though you have to get everything done in 5 years. Not really realistic.
Do others kind of agree that longer term approach in this plan is useful? Cause I think that's something we see with a lot of climate action plans. It's either like a very narrow focus or a very long-term focus. And when you often look at the longer term, it's higher level actions, because we don't know how the implementation details, like the nitty gritty, is really gonna be in 15 years when we go start doing that. So I'm curious kind of where others feel on like how this plan should fall in that scheme.
I think longer term is fine. I do have a question about, are we considering, demographic projections in this scope?
Okay, what?
Demographic projections, like if our population here is gonna increase by X amount in the next 25 years, is that gonna be considered as part of?
Good question.
And what is the profile of those residents? Are they adding to the pool of commuters? Are they of a different age set?
So it's something that, depending on what kind of quantification we do, when we're looking at, if we wanna do like a multiple scenario out to 2050 of like an emissions reduction, then we would consider population growth.
So we've had in previous meetings an unresolved conversation about this in terms of the resilience part of the mandate. Where I think it's fair to say we did not have agreement the last time we talked about how to view the mandate on this plan. So thinking in terms of resilience and adaptation. Some of us have felt that there is value in trying to look farther into the future. And to understand what our community's responsibilities are going to be to vulnerable populations and to try to identify where our vulnerabilities are, whether that is flooding or fire or heat deaths for the aging population, to try to get our arms around those risks better and to start thinking longer term than 5 years about what work we need to do in the next 5 years to set us up for long-term resilience goals. But we were not of one mind on that when we discussed this previously. It was a bit of a quagmire for us. So I think that there are some of us who feel that there is value in looking beyond the 5 year period and to start thinking about what to be doing longer term. And there are some of us that are of the opinion that we really ought to stay focused on the 5 years, and to the extent that we want to think longer term, it's what do we need to do in the next 5 years so that we can talk about that stuff 5 years from now. So I think that we would greatly appreciate your help in resolving that conflict. I don't want to start litigating that conflict again now.
I just to add on to it, the place where I think we want to be looking forward. So we're climate geeks that lose sleep at night over this stuff. And we tend to think, in 25 years, we don't have a gas system anymore. We've basically done big projects and the world is a very different place. But that's a long time. That's if you look at 5 years at a time and you think, okay, we have to install some heat pumps around town, we have to install 500 heat pumps. And we never get to facing the fact of like, we have to be shutting down, we have to plan a transition orderly, during the 2030s and 2040s, sort of like, we'll never get to that unless we think about a little longer term. That's where I think the longer. That's the other aspect of the longer term planning that I think gets tricky. I don't know how many people, because I think if we have lots of public discussions about how we're going to take away everybody's gas, that might not go that well. I don't know.
We've seen with climate action plans too that, really focus in on those specific 5 year goals and then have some, I don't want to use the word looser, but more broad, long-term visions in conjunction with those really solid next 5 years. So it could be a blend of both worlds.
Let's say it's not a zero
I
sum.
think it has to
Yeah.
be.
It doesn't have to be like all or nothing, it could be where these next 5 years are really laid out, where like these are strategic goals and tasks that Concord is going to complete by 2030, 2031, 2032. Where then, by 2050, this is what we really like to see, and some loose action items to get us closer to that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that seems reasonable.
I think this is all really helpful to kind of think about how the plan will be outlined as we're working through this. So that way, as we're developing actions, we can kind of bucket them as like, this is going to be something that's a longer term action and really keeping that timeline in mind versus this is something that is the high priority for the near term.
Before I forget to ask about this, we're joined on the Zoom by the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee, Mark Galis. And if we're gonna be doing this exercise and having a review of transportation, do we think that it would be a good idea to loop in either Mark or Rebecca or somebody else from TAC looking at that sheet?
Of course.
Yeah.
Mark, are you with us right now?
1 second, let me promote him to co-host.
He just raised his hand.
So he is here, or somebody posing as Mark Galis is here.
Mark, I just made you a co-host so you can unmute now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Shannon. Appreciate it. I think that well, I'm really happy to be here listening to the presentation and discussion. I think it would be helpful to both in terms of the existing 2020 plan mobility section and in terms of any of that preliminary documentation kind of coming out of the brainstorming, things like that, for me to bring that to the TAC and get the membership of the Transportation Advisory Committee in general kind of providing some inputs and suggestions on that. I mean, of course, it can also be, myself or Rebecca, highlighting that, working with that, etc. I was going to say too that since the last plan, we now have a functioning Transportation Advisory Committee, which is both looking at existing issues and challenges, safety, public input process for prioritizing infrastructure projects, et cetera, but also hopefully thinking more about public education and proactive things such as public transportation and increasing safety for pedestrians and cyclists, et cetera. We also have, since that time of the 2020 plan, we now have a kind of a new position, Alyssa Sandoval, as the director of community development, which is in some ways a little, I don't know what how Megan would put it. She'd know better than I, but it's a little bit more, I think, comprehensive and forward-looking than just the planning division. So I think, and she's the staff person working closely with TAC. So anything I can bring to TAC to kind of get an overall impression, I think would be, and get feedback for this committee and the consultants would be good. And then in addition, we can have some individuals. So I didn't mean to be kind of going on and on, but.
Wait, what's your next meeting? Is it next week?
The next meeting is on Tuesday, and I can bring some, we have a pretty full meeting because there's another interesting aspect about the timing, which is that two kind of major things are going on with staff in collaboration with Stantec, two Stantec consulting groups, an engineering and a planning group. One is that there's been a comprehensive transportation strategy being developed. So another sort of dovetailed plan, if you will, for forward-looking transportation improvements and investments. And then also the Public Works Department has enlisted a Stantec engineering group to do things such as evaluate the condition of all the roads, evaluate the condition of the sidewalks and sidewalk network, and come up with a process for taking public input in terms of safety concerns or looking for new infrastructure. So, trying to dovetail these things two together, I think is important. So there'll be things that perhaps we can, that TAC and Public Works can provide to this committee and the consultants doing this plan that might be helpful too.
Would you be game to tack this on to your remarks to the committee?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a pretty full meeting, but it can certainly be, I can put it in my remarks, and any documentation. I mean, I can highlight the mobility section of the existing plan, but if there's some additional documentation to share with TAC members that we can then discuss more formally at a succeeding meeting and give you some feedback or suggestions, that'd be great.
So I think there are two things to make the consultants here aware of, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page on. So number one, the Excel document that they referenced previously, there has been a little more research done that is probably not reflected on that page, and a big chunk of it was farmed out to Rebecca Woodward, who's one of the members of TAC, researching where we've been on the mobility issues, and we have not given her any kind of time frame to report that back to us, because we haven't been doing our half of the rest of the mobility stuff. But I do think that we should kind of put a bow on her research if we can. So I don't want to put that in your lap, Mark, but I'll reach out to Rebecca and communicate that to her. And you guys should just know that that should be coming, that we'll have her and then probably a couple other things in the mobility space to hand to you to fill out that Excel sheet a little bit more. And then I think the second thing is, it sounded as if you had already assigned us randomly. And what I would ask you to do is just kind of pull one of us off of mobility, and instead TAC member to be named later. Again, Mark, if you think that you or Rebecca or somebody else would be game to do that, to have somebody from TAC represented in filling out our sheet.
Yeah, well, please include me in some of the communication with Rebecca so that I'm aware. It'll be more efficient than me, you talking to her and me talking to her. But the other thing is, I would prefer, I think it'd be a more robust process if, in addition to what Rebecca is pulling together, at a future TAC meeting, I actually put something on the agenda where the entire TAC can kick this around and kind of indicate priorities and directions for actual action over the 5-year or longer term, because it's a rich subject and
Yes.
a lot of opportunity, I think. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, well, among the people here and you, we'll try to work that out, definitely. Thank you. Other discussion thoughts?
Well, I was wondering, have you already set up like a SharePoint or some way of us viewing what's happening, what the progress is? What's it?
We have just shared documents internally between Weston Sampson and Shannon here, but if there's a process that works well for document sharing with you all, we're happy to do so.
Right, I just like to come up with something. Just to get visibility on be able to, these, I don't know if these sheets are things we want to be getting copies of and marking them up and sending them back.
I think that is exactly what we need, in fact, because of open meeting law.
Right,
Yes, so like if doing a shared drive is challenging with you all, because then you would be editing the same
no,
document.
you have to do, if you only,
Yeah,
You can do that.
then,
but I'll still have to send things to you all to then send back to me.
right.
Because you won't be able to upload things into the drive either if it's shared, if it's
course.
view only.
Just want to get there.
Is there a way to share a folder and still be able to put dump docs into a folder that are view only? No.
No, I don't think it's SharePoint with our
Oh, it's SharePoint's not.
yeah, and I also think there's an added layer of you all not having Concord MA
Right.
email addresses
Yeah.
with that security. So I think we can definitely have something where you can view, but you won't be able to upload.
Yeah.
What else?
So those were most of the main pieces we wanted to start talking about today. But I think this, brings up a good point of like other committees that we should be engaging with and other groups as well. So we're starting to do somewhat of a stakeholder mapping exercise to just figure out who needs to be at the table for these conversations, besides just like open public meetings and this group.
So open to suggestions from you all on other groups that we might not be aware of that you think should be involved, or that maybe we need to have like individual stakeholder interviews with. TAC being a great one that like if they have their own brainstorming session in a future meeting, then maybe we communicate with them directly. On sharing more information there, doing a similar process of like, this is their brainstorm and then this is their priorities. So it's open to thoughts on other stakeholders as we start navigating that piece.
Got thoughts or feedback on that subject now, feel free to say them now, and if you don't think of it right now, we'll get it to Shannon and Shannon will get it to you.
So I guess the question I have is there's sort of the TAC is a great example of another committee that's like this, and it is, you know, it's a sort of government advisory body and it's, you know, public meetings, and then there's sort of more informal, but very kind of robustly attended ongoing groups like the Natural Resources Council. They have a monthly coffee, and you have some really passionate, really educated folks from town that go to that every month. It's generally mostly information sharing, but certainly this would be. So I guess the question is, you know, each kind of group, stakeholder group is not equal in terms of, you know, relationship to the town and formulation and size. Some are really big, some are tiny. And some of them are sort of more like formal meetings, some are sort of information sharing. So in terms of that sort of two-way dialogue, I'm just curious what you envision there. And is there a way in which, similar to like you're saying, assigning committee members to tackle a pillar, or would there, does it make sense to sort of have ambassadors to those groups? To kind of encourage that two-way interchange of information, so it's not just sort of one-way presentation or updates, but it's a sort of more of a dialogue. To your point, I think really rich discussion is needed. And I think we tend to do a lot of these meetings where it's just sort of sharing out one way. So I don't have an answer to that. I guess, are there models that you've seen in the past, or do you have a suggestion? Because I have some groups in mind, like the Natural Resources one, but I'm not sure how they fit in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think they're a liaison or ambassador model works really well, just to like allow people to kind of connect within individual networks or into those smaller groups. And then I think if we are able to do some outreach to that with we can use kind of the first public workshop meeting as like a gathering of lots of groups, and if that's something that we organize by sector, then folks that are interested in discussing like natural resource specific actions, maybe like we have different tables by sectors. So that could be one approach to start having those conversations, but then open up a space where we can have more of that open discussion and like lots of people maybe joining, and maybe municipal staff are in attendance to that as well, and it's open to all.
Go ahead, Megan.
I think that's such a great point, and I have so many thoughts on how to do it, and I think, you know, with this budget and like this, it's kind of limited, I mean, and you know, thinking about outreach, I think the committee and others, you know, staff and other committees, we all have to kind of do our part. But like how to do it, how do we set it up so that we're being successful and not just kind of talking and really collecting information? Like maybe we can think a little bit about what is it, like intake form when we're going to these coffees, and how are we, it's a little bit of like train the trainer, like how are we prepared for this dialogue beyond everyday conversation so that we can be getting to the meat of it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I had another thought that I think I just lost. Oh, I thought, you know, a few groups were mentioned just now that I wasn't aware of. And I wonder if some homework might be some mapping of the community groups to make sure we have, I mean, maybe that exists somewhere, but just to make sure we're hitting all of these, you know, opportunities to engage with the community. That might be something, there'll probably be a lot of redundancies, but there might be some new things that can pull out, because I don't know them either, you know, I don't live here, so.
So what would the deliverable be? We each just write down on a piece of paper, like
Yeah.
Mothers Out Front, Concord Can, the library.
Thanks for being creative, like, if you think of something that no one else thought of, then you can get a prize.
I think organizing
Bingo cards.
by sector is sometimes helpful, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of sector specific groups, like the natural resources
Okay.
one and TAC being a mobility transportation one. So we've done it in the past, some where we have like an Excel spreadsheet and it's just like every column is a different sector, and we are filling in as we gather information from different sectors or from different potential groups to engage. So I think that is also, since we're kind of aligning actions by sector, thinking about stakeholders by sector,
Good.
potentially the public workshop by sector, it's a good way to organize.
Well, all the, town committees are on the website. So you can sort of go through and say, this committee seems relevant and so on. The tricky one is these community-based
Yeah.
organizations like Concord Can, which are not on the website.
Mhm.
So we can help you with that. So I guess we just agreed to do that, like send Sharon.
Yeah, you
this.
can send them to me, and I also think the list of committees on our website is really long. I feel like I know the ones that we should be
Okay,
engaging with.
yeah,
It's always hard to know on a website if it's an active committee.
Yeah,
and, like, what
that's
their
it.
meeting schedules are like, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Look,
feel
I
like I
can
have
help
that
you.
covered.
yeah, and Megan, say no.
I was gonna say, share that with us too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's a long list.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely others. I think the school was mentioned,
Yeah.
in Megan's update too. So if there's like individual school groups or PTA groups, that we would have a hard time finding, like thinking about those as well.
Yeah.
And we could be strategic with these stakeholder meetings, I've had success with other ones where we kind of prepare homework like this almost, or even like. Before the meeting, we send our documentation just to get their minds with, if we have a specific deliverable or action item that we're really trying to target or take away from that meeting, we can guide a small worksheet. Beforehand, and maybe even something afterhand, just so that, we're not all coming to that conversation and just like sometimes we're just talking and, just introducing ourselves and trying to figure out what we're gonna try to talk.
Do you expect help from Sharon and Megan to setting up these meetings? I mean, they have all the emails and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So it sounds as if we're firmly transitioning toward our action items. And what we need to do next. Before we make sure we're all on the same page on the homework. Are there any other questions or things or ground that we want to cover right now?
The only question I had is, all of this sort of beyond the spreadsheet that we worked on is from our January brainstorming. Since January, I think some of us have sent to you some parking lot ideas, and I'm curious where that fits into all of this.
Yeah, so far I've just been saving them to our internal SharePoint. I don't think we plugged them into the worksheet. I think what's different is that right now, are those mostly new ideas, or are they mostly, revising an idea that was in the plan? That's something that we have to think about before I think we could just plug them right into these worksheets. I don't know what
A
the
lot of
preference
things-
is.
I haven't seen everything that has been sent to you, but a lot of the things I've been CC'd on, and I think a lot of the things that are on people's lists are things which warrant a deliberative discussion at some point. So it wouldn't really be a ripe issue to plug into a plan because we kind of need to have a talk
Right.
about those things first and see if there's a.
Yeah, so what I'm saying though is should we take a stab at trying to plug them into these worksheets before you fill them out?
I mean, if you were able to put it together and share it with us, because we shared our individual with you,
Mm-hmm.
then we could be able to judge what, prioritize what goes into the plan or what and what's written.
I think we could certainly add them, and then I think it would no longer be like you're looking at a couple of them. I think then you're gonna need to look at kind of all the sectors.
Yeah.
So it would be like an expanded, adding all the brainstorm ideas and then still being open to continuing to add more brainstorm ideas because we're just in that early process of that. So I guess there's kind of like tiers to the brainstorming, and I think at this point, as we move out of the brainstorming into the okay, how do we refine this? We'll have to start thinking about the
near term, 5 years and beyond the long term actions, because I think that's where things are gonna be bucketed into, like, maybe this is a high priority action that gets a lot of detail, and maybe this one is gonna be a topic discussed lightly in the plan. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we start going through, because there might be things that the way that this form is currently set up, doesn't really have a place for, it has ideas for integration, but if it's not an idea for integration, it needs a spot to indicate that you don't feel that it is right for the plan too. So it sounds like we can rework the form a little bit to incorporate the additional ideas that we have in those separate documents. And maybe add an extra column or two to kind of facilitate more of the brainstorm piece.
So should we talk about homework and action items? Okay, I've heard during this discussion kind of 5 things that on our side of the table, we're sort of going to be responsible for in the coming month. Feel free to shout me down or edit if I am encapsulating something incorrectly, or if you want to propose an amendment. Number 1, we should all be intimately familiar with, i.e. you need to reread the 2020 Climate Action Plan. Number 2, keep sending your parking lot ideas to Shannon. If you haven't already, send them in now, because we're going to do some things with them over the course of the next month. If you have already sent stuff and you have new staircase width walking out the door today, send it to Shannon, because you can park your car in the parking lot anytime. Number 3, we're all going to try to help with our community stakeholder mapping. So you are expected to take some focus time, write down your list of who you think is a stakeholder, and sort of try to encapsulate qualitatively who they are, what they're about, and we're going to get that to Shannon to share.
If you have a contact, you can put that.
Excellent interruption. Yes. If there are any other interruptions, feel free to shout them out. Yeah, contact info, contact names, any kind of really super relevant story about them. Very active, not very active, lots of people, not very many people. Hope they're going to be more involved, haven't been yet. That kind of information would be relevant. Those of you who have transportation stuff to wrap a bow on, get that in so that it can be integrated into this spreadsheet. Brad, you may want to take another look at the Excel just to make sure that it is in fact up to date. If there is anything else that needs to go in, we should communicate that to them. And I'll get in touch with Rebecca to make sure that she has an opportunity to report her pieces, so that we can verify whether that Excel that you've got is in fact up to date. And then we should expect from you, after a bit of tinkering, that we're going to get just in our inboxes, in our email,
Yes.
spreadsheet pages to fill out. And one of those should go to Mark, who may or may not be responsible for it. It may happen that somebody else on tap fills it in, but treat them as if they were a member of this committee dedicated to the mobility section only. And we'll work out exactly who's going to be responsible for that later on. It sounds like maybe, possibly Tuesday next week. Does that sound right to everybody?
So for the community stakeholder mapping, we're treating that like a parking lot idea, just email Shannon.
Yeah, your full list. Not one by one.
Not car by car.
Does that sound right to you?
That sounds great.
Okay. Or would you be hopeful that our select board liaison would also be doing this?
You want me to do? I mean, I definitely can send stakeholders, but I bet you guys are gonna nail it anyways, but I'll send whatever I have.
That would be great. Thank you. If you have time.
Sure.
One question, I guess, format for these. Right now it's like a Word document table, but as obviously as you get more information in, Excel gets a little bit easier for tables. So curious if folks are comfortable like with an Excel file, so that way there's just more columns and.
Some of us enjoy words. So I think it's fair to say we need more space on the page.
Right.
So if you do develop climate change projections, scenarios for concrete, what do you think they might be done by, like in a month or something?
I think that will be a later, action as we get into, I think that's more like task 4, which we were planning to do once we have more of the actions identified, a little bit of overlap at the end, like as we're nearing final actions, with then starting to like look at the other data that would inform like more of the plan piece. But I could see the value in having some of that information earlier, so you can make more informed decisions on the types of actions.
Yeah, I was just thinking it might, inform the process, just how bad it's gonna be. But, you have the schedule, so I don't know how flexible you are with it, but.
We can certainly start pulling relevant
It's
conference
easy.
data. Yeah.
It's all out there pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can certainly pull the data, and have that readily available. And then we can think about like how we wanna continue to use it with that later.
I think we agreed it would be useful, so, yeah, but. Yeah. I know it's like being a consultant, so yes.
I have a question. Are you drilling for, in terms of, I mean, maybe this is sort of down the road when we're sort of looking at the various things and, you can't do it all, right? So there's gonna be some decisions to be made. I'm curious what kind of frameworks or parameters or resources are you turning to or have you turned to or towns have turned to sort of interrogate and evaluate that? So for example, like, project drawdown or some other things that I have to sort of talk about, like really effective solutions and maybe sort of not as effective solutions based on the impact on sort of greenhouse gas reductions or things like that. They're just one example. There's many out there. There's different simulators like En-ROADS out of MIT, and all these different tools. It's just sort of, it's amazing that all this stuff exists, but it makes it a little dizzying of a process. And I'm wondering if you've got a vision for how we might think about that.
Yeah, we've used En-ROADS a little bit in the past, but I think the scale being so large, it's really hard to like, when you have a nitty gritty little action, how to look at that. But so we've developed some like a matrix of different criteria for prioritization for some other communities, and really honed that in on what their priorities as a community are. So looking at like equitable implementation of actions, looking at like the scale of resilience for a project, like is this action something that impacts like one neighborhood in Concord? Is it a community-wide resilience action? And then of course looking at like emissions reduction, like small reduction versus large reductions. We've looked at like public health indicators there as well, so that could be one where we pull in the climate data and think about like tree-related actions are both a mitigation and an adaptation action. So maybe that gets like extra points in the criteria for prioritization. So that's one option, is kind of determining a set of criteria and using that either like quantitatively, like assigning a score to each action based on the criteria, or just using it as like a guiding principle to then qualitatively look at each of the actions and possibly decide as a group like what to include and not to include.
And could it be both quantitative and
Yes,
qualitative?
certainly could be both.
Okay.
All right, any parting thoughts? Well, congratulations. We actually had a 1-hour conversation in only 1 hour. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome to stay, but I think we don't have too much left. We're gonna be out the door in a few minutes, I hope.
Actually, just last question, is it the two of you that we'll see for the next, I don't even know the months, I should have looked at it, 10 months or something. Or are there other folks on the team that we'll be interacting with as well?
We have several other folks on our team. We'll probably be 2 of the primary people that you see, but we may pull in others based on availability and meeting dates.
Could you mention another team member who?
Yeah, so Robin Seidel is our project manager. Her area of specialty is in resilience, and then we also have some other energy folks with, you know, those specific mitigation side, as expertise as well. Grace Rao is another name that you might see. She's another sustainability planner on our team. I was thinking the Concord, Chris, isn't there? Oh, and Don Bolduc, and if you know Don, he was on the committee during the last plan. So he also now works for Weston and Sampson, previously with the city of Concord. So his expertise and closeness to Concord is really helpful as well. So he's totally involved in the planning process as well. He was hoping to be here tonight, but he's on vacation in Europe, so that's fun. Very nice.
Your name was what?
Philip. Billy? Yes. You might see William in emails, but. Yes.
Yeah, just some, person, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes draft, the January 21 minutes. Did anybody have any amendments or commentary that they did not already transmit to Brad? Before I solicit a motion, how do we feel about the inclusion of the AI summary in it? Is that a practice that we want to have moving forward? Did you feel like that was a good summary? Is that something that we want to keep as a practice?
The first bit.
Yeah. Well, it's the first the high level summary paragraph, and then the bullet points underneath were also AI, correct?
So I mean, I read through it, I didn't just.
Yeah, not implying you were following it blindly, no.
But it helped me put it together, made it faster.
Well, I think you're talking about specifically the summary paragraph, not the whole notes, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I think that's helpful. As long as it's not hallucinating, I think it's very helpful to have a summary up top.
Are there other committees that we know of that do something similar to this, or would we kind of be out on our own having an AI assisted high level summary?
No, I would say you're not alone
Not
with committees including that.
Okay. So is this something that we would like to retain? I guess two questions. Is this something we want to retain this month as drafted here? And is this something that we want to continue to do moving forward?
Yeah, well, the bit about having the high level bullet points, I mean, the minutes serve a couple of purposes. One is for posterity, people from the public can figure out what happened. Another thing is people in the committee can look at the minutes and say, oh, I was supposed to do that. That's actually, I think, the most important point, and that's the bullet points there should capture that, hopefully. Because it's a whole month between meetings and it's a lot going on, it's easy to forget. That's why I'm trying to send them out early enough so that, you know, you can take a look at it and maybe just look at the bullets and say, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this and this month. Just as a comment.
You just have to check the bullets. It's not always 100%. That's the only thing I would just advise. I would just say, just check them all, like the AI summary and the to-dos that come out of AI summary.
Yeah,
They're not always 100%.
no, they're not.
So, yeah, so as long as I check.
I do think you're right that they're best used as action items.
Right.
Yeah.
Action item summary, not so much like what was.
Yeah.
Thoroughly discussed at the meeting.
Yeah.
Haven't heard much in the way of anybody else's opinions. I just want to get can we get a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this concept, including some kind of high level summary?
I think it's fine.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
To accept the whole minutes.
If that's what you want.
I wasn't sure if there's still just a motion about the high level summary. I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 21st.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes as drafted, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, signify by saying no. The ayes have it. It's unanimous. We, well, Mark is a member of the public. We have one member of the public left with us. Thank you for staying this whole time. This is the time on the agenda for public comments, if there are any.
Yeah, this is Mark. I just thank people and keep me in the loop. I'll try to attend meetings that I can. Thanks.
We will, greatly appreciate you. All right, we are in line for, I can't believe I didn't do this. I didn't put down the date of our next meeting anywhere. What's the third Wednesday of March?
It's the 18th.
That's right, March.
March
18th.
is the same as February, let's see, easier.
You know, some of us should get sharper. Thank you. I should know that. Does the chair hear a motion to adjourn to meet next in this room at 7 PM on March 18th?
It looks like, yeah.
That sounds like a yes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Aye.
Aye.